Hello, welcome to Resena Historica. Today we have an exclusive interview with one of history's iconic leaders. Known for leading India to independence without ever wielding a weapon, was imprisoned 11 times for his peaceful resistance against British rule. His philosophy of nonviolence and truth not only inspired millions in India, but also world leaders globally. Join us to explore the life, challenges, and legacy of this great man. Mahatma Gandhi.
Namaste. I am immensely grateful for the opportunity to be here today. It is an honor to share my journey and truths with all of you. I hope our conversation inspires reflection on the importance of nonviolence.
Mahatma Gandhi. Could you describe the historical and personal context you lived in during your youth?
During my youth, India was under British rule, causing widespread dissatisfaction and independence movements. India was organized into castes, historical social divisions based on heritage and occupation, traditionally composed of four main groups: Brahmins, priests and scholars; Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers; Vaishyas, merchants and farmers; and Shudras, workers and servants. I belonged to the Vaishya caste, specifically the Madhbaniya subcaste, which consisted of merchants and entrepreneurs. My devout and conservative Hindu family in Porbandar, Gujarat, shaped my early beliefs and values, influenced by my father's local government role and my deeply religious mother, who followed Jain principles of nonviolence and vegetarianism. This environment influenced my future journey for justice and nonviolence.
Could you tell us about your marriage and Indian customs at the time?
I married very young at 13 to Kasturba, who was the same age. Child marriage was common in India then, especially among families of our caste and religion. Marriages were usually arranged by parents to strengthen family and social alliances. The ceremonies were traditional and full of religious rituals. For us, marriage was a journey of mutual learning with challenges and growth, deeply influencing my understanding of partnership, respect, and sacrifice.
At what age did you go abroad to study and why? Knowing that your caste did not approve?
I went to study abroad at the age of 18 in 1888 when I traveled to London to study law. The decision was motivated by the desire to become a lawyer and better serve my community. However, my caste, the Madhbaniya, disapproved of the trip, believing that crossing the sea would corrupt religious customs and traditions. Despite the disapproval, my mother and other family members supported me, allowing me to pursue my goal.
Your mother approved, but what was her influence on your time in London?
My mother approved of my going to London, gave many pieces of advice, and made me promise to remain faithful to our religious values. She asked me to avoid meat, alcohol, and promiscuity. During my time in London, these pieces of advice served as a constant moral guide, helping me maintain my cultural and spiritual identity. Her influence was crucial in keeping me disciplined and focused on my studies, despite the temptations and challenges of living in a foreign country.
Since we are talking about London, how was it living there? What were the biggest challenges?
Living in London was a transformative and challenging experience. I adapted to a new cultural and climatic environment and faced prejudice and discrimination for being Indian. Maintaining a vegetarian diet, as promised to my mother, was a major challenge. I found and frequented vegetarian restaurants and even joined the Vegetarian Society. Additionally, the academic rigor and the need to communicate effectively in English were significant barriers. However, these challenges strengthened my determination and prepared me for future struggles.
Speaking of struggle, how did your legal training influence your approach to the fight for justice?
My legal training had a significant influence on my approach to the fight for justice. Legal training taught me the importance of rational argumentation, evidence, and law. I developed negotiation and oratory skills, which I used to articulate my ideas clearly and persuasively. Additionally, practicing law reinforced my commitment to truth and ethics, which became pillars of my philosophy of satyagraha, nonviolent resistance based on the pursuit of truth and justice.
Mr. Gandhi, what were the main influences on your philosophy of nonviolence?
My main influences on the philosophy of nonviolence were diverse. The teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and the principles of Jainism, which my mother practiced, were fundamental. Additionally, Reading texts about the Sermon on the Mount by Jesus Christ and the life of Tolstoy shaped my understanding of nonviolence. The work of Henry David Thoreau on civil disobedience also had a profound impact. These influences helped me develop satyagraha, based on the pursuit of truth and peaceful resistance.
For viewers who know nothing about this philosophy, could you explain a little more?
The philosophy of nonviolence, or ahimsa, is based on rejecting the use of physical force to resolve conflict. Instead, it promotes peaceful resistance and love as tools for social transformation. The pillars of the philosophy of nonviolence are ahimsa, practice of nonviolence in thoughts, words, and actions; satyagraha, pursuit of truth and peaceful resistance against injustice; tapasya, sacrifice and personal discipline to achieve moral transformation; brahmacharya, self-control and simple living, focusing on purity of body and mind; sarvodaya, the welfare of all, promoting social and economic justice. These pillars together form the basis for a life of integrity and peaceful activism.
Was the concept of satyagraha developed from the philosophy of nonviolence?
Yes, satyagraha, which means force of truth, is a form of peaceful resistance where the fight against injustice is conducted without the use of violence. Through practicing ahimsa and seeking truth, I realized that nonviolent resistance could be a powerful tool for social and political change. Satyagraha requires courage, discipline, and unwavering faith in truth.
Which other thinkers and philosophies influenced you in creating the concept of satyagraha?
In addition to Indian sacred texts and religious traditions like Jainism, I was deeply influenced by several Western thinkers and their philosophy. Leo Tolstoy's work on Christian nonviolence had a significant impact on my vision. Reading Henry David Thoreau on civil disobedience was fundamental in developing satyagraha. John Ruskin, with his book Unto This Last, inspired my ideas about social justice and economic equality. These influences, combined with my beliefs, shaped the concept of satyagraha.
Was the concept of satyagraha developed before or after you went to Africa?
The concept of satyagraha was developed after I went to South Africa. It was there, during the struggle against racial discrimination and injustice faced by Indians, that I refined and applied the philosophy of nonviolent resistance. The experiences and challenges I encountered in South Africa helped me shape and test the principles of satyagraha, which I later brought back to India in the fight for independence.
Why did you go to Africa?
I went to South Africa in 1893 to work as a lawyer on a case for an Indian company. The opportunity arose because they needed someone with legal knowledge and fluency in English. My stay in South Africa extended to 21 years, during which I witnessed and fought against the intense racial discrimination faced by Indians and other minorities. These experiences were crucial in developing my philosophy of nonviolent resistance.
When and why did you return to India?
I returned to India in 1915 after spending 21 years in South Africa. I decided to return because I felt that my experience and the nonviolent resistance strategies developed in South Africa could be applied in the struggle for India's independence. I believed it was my duty to contribute to my country's liberation from British rule, and I was determined to mobilize and unite the Indian people through satyagraha and civil disobedience.
What did you find when you returned?
When I returned to India in 1915, I found a country under British colonial rule, where poverty, discrimination, and injustice were widespread. The Indian people were suffering under economic and social exploitation, with high taxes, unemployment, and an economy dominated by British interests. I also noticed social fragmentation due to caste and religious divisions. I saw the urgent need to unite the Indian people and mobilize them for a peaceful struggle for independence and social justice.
How did you deal with religious and social divisions during the independence movement?
To address religious and social divisions during the independence movement, I promoted unity and equality among all Indians, regardless of caste or religion. I advocated for interfaith harmony, encouraging collaboration among Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and other communities. I conducted fasts and organized campaigns to promote reconciliation and combat discrimination. I emphasized the importance of mutual respect and nonviolence, believing that true independence could only be achieved through national unity and social justice.
Did you face much opposition within and outside the Indian National Congress?
Yes, I faced much opposition both within and outside the Indian National Congress. Within the Congress, some leaders disagreed with my strategies of nonviolence and civil disobedience, preferring more moderate or at times more radical approaches. Outside the Congress, there was resistance from religious leaders and groups who saw my ideas of interfaith and social unity as a threat to their interests. Despite these difficulties, I remained steadfast in my convictions, believing that nonviolence and unity were essential for India's liberation.
What was the most significant act of civil disobedience you helped organize?
The most significant act of civil disobedience I helped organize was the Salt March in 1930. In response to the British monopoly on salt production and sale, I organized a 24-day march covering approximately 390 kilometers, from Sabarmati to Dandi. The march symbolized peaceful resistance against unjust laws and inspired thousands of Indians to challenge British authority. This act of civil disobedience was a crucial turning point in the Indian independence movement.
Are you enjoying the interview? Don't forget to leave a like. This will strengthen the channel, helping us bring more content like this. What British law did the Salt March disobey?
The Salt March disobeyed the British salt law, which prohibited Indians from collecting or producing salt independently, forcing them to buy heavily taxed salt from the British government. This law was a clear economic exploitation of the Indian people, as salt is an essential element in daily life. The Salt March was a symbolic act of resistance against this injustice, encouraging Indians to collect their own salt and challenge British control. We marched to the coast, specifically to the village of Dandi. Upon arrival on April 6, 1930, I symbolically collected a bit of salt evaporated from seawater, violating the British salt law. This defiant act inspired thousands of Indians to follow our example, producing and collecting salt illegally. The Salt March highlighted the injustice of colonial laws and mobilized the Indian people in a massive movement of civil disobedience, demonstrating the power of nonviolent resistance.
Were you arrested this time?
Yes, I was arrested shortly after the Salt March. In May 1930, I was detained by British authorities for violating the salt law. My arrest sparked a wave of protests and demonstrations across India, with tens of thousands of Indians being arrested for participating in acts of civil disobedience. My detention only strengthened the Indian people's resolve to continue the struggle for independence through peaceful resistance and nonviolence.
How many more times were you imprisoned?
Throughout my activism, I was imprisoned multiple times. In total, I was arrested 11 times, both in India and South Africa. Each imprisonment was a consequence of my participation in acts of civil disobedience and peaceful protests against the injustices of the British colonial regime. These detentions only increased my determination and that of the Indian people to fight for independence and human rights.
Did you suffer a lot of physical violence?
Yes, I suffered physical violence on several occasions due to my peaceful resistance. I was assaulted by British police officers and opponents both in India and South Africa. One of the most severe assaults occurred in 1893 in South Africa when I was thrown off a train for refusing to leave the first-class compartment reserved for whites.
How did your wife and family cope with this situation?
My wife Kasturba and my family faced many difficulties due to my activism. Kasturba was a dedicated partner and constant supporter, often participating in protests and even being imprisoned. My family suffered from long absences and the uncertainties resulting from my imprisonments and the violence I faced. However, they shared my beliefs and understood the importance of the struggle for freedom and justice, enduring the hardships with courage and resilience.
Could you talk about your fasts and how they served as a tool for political protest?
My fasts were a powerful tool for political protest and a means of self-sacrifice to promote the cause of justice. I used fasts to draw attention to specific issues, such as caste discrimination, communal violence, and colonial injustice. By fasting, I demonstrated my commitment to nonviolence and truth, pressuring both the British government and Indian society to confront and resolve these injustices. These fasts mobilized popular support and attracted worldwide attention to our causes.
How many times did you fast as a protest? And what was your longest fast?
I fasted as a form of political protest several times throughout my life. In total, I undertook 17 fasts, each with a specific purpose to combat injustices and promote peace. My longest fast lasted 21 days, conducted in 1943 during World War II, as an appeal for India's liberation from British rule and to draw global attention to the Indian cause. These fasts were forms of moral pressure, highlighting the commitment to truth and nonviolence.
Your characteristic attire has a philosophical significance, doesn't it?
Yes, I chose to wear simple clothes made of khadi, hand-spun fabric, as a symbol of self-sufficiency and resistance to British economic control over India. By promoting the use of khadi, I encouraged Indians to boycott British goods and value local production. My attire also represented my solidarity with the poorest and my commitment to a simple and austere life.
What was your vision for an independent India, and how did you hope it would be governed?
My vision was of a nation where all individuals, regardless of caste, religion, or gender, lived in harmony and equality. I believed in governance based on the principles of nonviolence and truth. I advocated for an economy based on self-sufficiency and sustainability, emphasizing the development of villages and the promotion of basic education. I hoped that India would be governed by leaders who followed ethical and moral values, always seeking the well-being of all citizens.
Many people followed you. Could you tell us about that and also about your relationship with world leaders and your influence?
Many people followed my ideas of nonviolence and peaceful resistance. Thousands of Indians joined the movements of satyagraha, civil disobedience, and boycott, helping to advance India's independence. My relationship with other world leaders was marked by respect and the exchange of ideas. I corresponded with figures like Leo Tolstoy, who influenced my philosophy, and Martin Luther King Jr., who adopted and adapted my methods of nonviolence in the struggle for civil rights in the United States. These interactions enriched my vision and strengthened the global movement for peace and justice.
Gandhi, did you succeed?
Yes, we achieved India's independence in 1947 after years of peaceful struggle and resistance. However, the journey was not easy and brought challenges like the partition of the country and communal violence. Although we gained freedom from British rule, my vision of a united and harmonious India still faces challenges. The fight for justice, equality, and nonviolence continues, and I hope future generations uphold these values.
Could you explain the partition of India?
The partition of India occurred in 1947, resulting in the creation of two independent countries, India and Pakistan. This process, known as partition, was driven by religious and political tensions between Hindus and Muslims. Muslim leaders, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, sought a separate state to ensure the rights and security of Muslims. The partition resulted in massive violence, forced displacement, and loss of lives. It was a period of great suffering and sadness for me, as I always dreamed of a united and harmonious India.
What was the highest price you paid for your struggle?
The highest price I paid for my struggle was the loss of my life. On January 30th, 1948, I was assassinated by Nathuram Godse, a Hindu extremist, who opposed my policies of peace and reconciliation between Hindus and Muslims. Over the years, I also endured imprisonments, physical violence, and persecution. My family faced difficulties and sacrifices as well. However, I believe these sacrifices were necessary for the cause of freedom and justice.
Did you write any books?
Yes, I wrote several books and articles throughout my life. My most well-known work is The Story of My Experiments with Truth, an autobiography published in 1927, where I recount my spiritual and political journey. I also wrote Hind Swaraj, Indian Home Rule, a book detailing my views on independence and self-sufficiency. Additionally, I published numerous articles and speeches in newspapers like Young India and Harijan, addressing social, political, and spiritual issues.
Could you talk a bit about your personal life?
My personal life was one of simplicity and dedication to my cause. I married at the age of 13 to Kasturba, who became a faithful partner in my journey. We had 4 sons, Harlal, Manilal, Ramdas, and Devdas. Family life faced challenges due to my long absences and commitment to the independence struggle. However, we always maintained a strong bond. I lived austerely, valuing self-sufficiency and practicing celibacy from 1906, part of my spiritual path.
Did you and your wife ever separate?
No, Kasturba and I never separated. We remained together throughout our lives, facing the challenges and sacrifices of the independence struggle. Kasturba was my faithful partner, sharing my ideals and supporting my work. She actively participated in resistance movements and was imprisoned several times for her involvement. Our relationship was one of partnership and mutual understanding despite the difficulties we faced.
How do you see India today?
It is encouraging to see that India has grown economically and become a global power in various sectors. However, my vision for India goes beyond economic growth. I desire an India where all citizens, regardless of their background, have equal access to opportunities, social justice, and a dignified life. I am concerned about persistent inequalities and believe that development should be sustainable and inclusive, focusing on the well-being of all, especially the poorest and most vulnerable.
We deeply thank Mahatma Gandhi for sharing his experiences, wisdom, and life philosophy with us. It has been an honor to hear his inspiring words and reflect on the importance of truth and nonviolence.
I would like to express my deep gratitude to all the viewers for their attention and interest. I thank the interviewer for this opportunity to share my experiences and convictions. I hope our discussions inspire each of you to seek truth, justice, and nonviolence in your own lives. Remember, change begins with each of us. Thank you, and may peace be with you all. Jai Hind.
We also thank all our viewers for watching this interview. We hope you have been as inspired as we have. Stay tuned for more enriching conversations with historical figures. Thank you very much, and see you next time. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Please leave a like and follow Resenha Historica for more content like this.